All right, guys, we're live. My name is Jader. I'm the founder of Black Label Closers. Today, we are going to tackle four very important subjects. As you all know, I always have notes and I read my notes. So I'm going to be looking at my notes right here. Hopefully, you guys can hear me fine. So, prospects mindset, right? We're going to go through some categories of prospects' minds or mindsets, and I'm going to give you tips on how to anticipate to any problems or how to solve some problems. I wouldn't call them problems, but challenges as far as the prospect's mind, right? So, the first thing that I wanted to touch base on a couple of things. As salespeople, especially if you're in the space of high ticket, all right, that means that well, obviously you're going to be selling something that is not a simple credit card transaction, right? Sometimes these transactions, if you're a closer and you've closed deals and you process credit cards, you know that sometimes it's a little bit of a lengthy process, especially when you're charging $20,000 or $30,000 on a credit card. Banks are not; they don't just allow people to process all that money at once, right? So some banks behave differently than others depending on the type of the habit of the spending habit of the prospect, right? So if the prospect is high end or has a company and he's constantly putting, $30,000, $20,000, they know this is very uh, common for the prospect, then the bank will understand that as a typical behavior, right? Hello, Yoey. Thank you for coming. Welcome. We'll start saying hi to people as we go. So, uh, but most people don't put $20,000, not even a year. I mean, most people, the most they do is a couple of grand, right? So the credit cards are used to or giving you a protection feature, which means that you would have to the card holder is going to have to call the bank, or the bank automatically sends a text message to their phone advising to decline or accept the charge, right? And sometimes it's just as simple as saying yes, and then you give it a few minutes, and then you can process the card again, right? And most likely it's going to go through. Most likely. Sometimes it does not, even when they do that, right? Meaning they have to call the bank, right? Most banks, the big banks, Citibank, Wells Fargo, all the big names out there typically have customer service 24/7, right? So they're gonna be able to call. I don't know how much of that is true 100%, but in my experience, I've never processed. Well, I have processed credit cards at 3 o'clock in the morning, but I didn't process a credit card at 3 o'clock in the morning because I was dealing with someone at that point at that time. um, it was either I was given a credit card, they asked me to wait a few hours, so they might have just done it at 3 o'clock in the morning, especially when you work virtually, or closing deals with people who live in Australia, right? I've closed people in England, Australia as well, and so they're they're in business hours when we're going to sleep here on this side of the world, right? So, uh, but I have never personally used my credit card on a $20,000 charge at that time. Well, I'm going to take that back. I have, um, but I'm not going to get into that. right now. That was in Vegas when I was very dumb and young and stupid. But I and I didn't have any problem because when I had my company, I typically would make purchases for the business on that level. But if you don't have that type of behavior with your credit cards, you're not going to be able to just charge $20,000 on the credit card. Now, when it's a debit card, is even more difficult because sometimes not even the bank grants you the opportunity or the chance to expand that daily limit, right? Um, you also have to deal with, is this a bank or a credit union? If it's a credit union, typically those outfits are small in nature, and they're just going to have people available to do the wire transfer at 5 o'clock until 5 o'clock, maybe 6, 7 o'clock in the afternoon, into the evening, right? So you have to, when you set up an appointment, and that's the reason why I always make sure that I know preemptively before I set the following call to close people. I make sure they tell me, give me information on what kind of credit slash monetary life they have and who do they bank with and all that stuff, right? You have to, in order for you to be able to gather all this information, you have to build the cell the way it needs to be structured, right? So you can't just ask for credit card. You remember, I always talk about posturing. I always talk about becoming the point of reference for them. So that implies earning their respect, their trust in a short period of time. And of course, you earn respect by tiers in the process of the conversation, right? So the first tier, there's one tier before you can ask for credit card information. You have to give them information. They have to trust that they're talking to a person who's a representative to the company that they're exploring, right? So keep that in mind when you. Some companies have teams that do the compliance, and those teams. It's a lot better if the company and if somebody who owns a floor is watching this and you want to have a team for compliance, which every company should have a compliance department, so that you can process a credit card. But before you process the credit card, you can find out if the closer or anybody has lied or coerce anybody into purchasing. And we're going to dedicate a whole video on FTC standards. We're going to talk a little bit about them today, but we need to make sure that look, please, I'm not condoning any type of breaching of compliance script, right? But salespeople are not attorneys. We're not attorneys, right? We're salespeople. So is the job of the company to get you on track if you're doing things that are not. Basic points for the FTC is if there's a company that has a lot of negative reviews, coupled with a lawsuit and chargebacks that are outside the norm, the FTC is going to come knocking on the door. Now, some companies get away with not being precise as far as within that standard, right? With the FTC, because the FTC almost strips you of the ability to be able to convince someone. Like if someone is not ready to pay that day, and of course it's closures we want to collect, there are a lot of things that you have to watch out for, right? But if you kind of step into the shady area and you don't know that you're doing it, the FTC is not just going to come just because you said something that's not right. I dealt with a company recently And the people, and this is what's hypocritical about companies like this. These companies, when they have gotten in trouble, right? When they have had a lot of problems with the FTC, then what they do is they start being really, if they want to, if they want to continue in the practice. So now what they do is they start pressuring salespeople to for the guidelines. But here's what's hypocritical. So I was in a company where I couldn't say anything because everything was a violation of FTC regulations. Anything I said, they brought it back to me. And mind you, that the people who were uh, correcting or analyzing the process, they were not salespeople. They were just nerds, and nerds are nerds, right? They're they're not compliance people, and uh, technology people are not salespeople. You can't mix those departments. You can't even mix HR and salespeople because we have a certain personality that we need to have that personality in order to be dominant with the process the life that we chose. Right, that's our profession. But what was hypocritical about this company is this company was asking me for a bunch of things, not to say a bunch of things. I mean, they were complaining. And then I see an event for 3 days that they had, and they broke every single rule they asked me not to break. As simple as that. So what does that tell me or tell us? That tells us that you can you're gonna have places in your pitch where it's gonna be borderline, and sometimes, but as long as you're not guaranteeing anything, right? As long as you're not making any earnings claims, right? Right, that you're not saying we're going to guarantee you're going to make this type of money, or if you invest into this, you're going to be able to make $300,000. You can't say that. You can't say that. I do pressure people to close them the same day, and you got to be careful of the way you do that. You got to be more persuasive than manipulative, right? So if you're going to be working for somebody, which is the goal, right? Then make sure that you understand how they want you to pitch, right? And even if you see that they break the rules a lot, don't do it, because if the FTC catches any of the company, by the way, the FTC is not going to be knocking on your door on the company, other than if your company is screwing people left and right, right? If the company neglected a couple of people in the fulfillment, they're not going to be in trouble, right? They'll probably get a chargeback in negative reviews, but they're not going to have the FTC right away finding out what's going on with you guys. You have to have, because the FTC cannot be looking out for everybody. And honestly, if they were to really get meticulous and demanding as per every single marketer, every single closer and setter, following every step, they're going to shut down every company. Not even the company that was scrutinizing me to make sure that I had a clean script. Not even them. Even the principal of the company broke a lot of rules. Because when I read the regulations and I heard him talk, he was breaking every rule. And he sells the salesperson that the salesperson at the end of the event was telling people, if you don't call me by the end of 40 minutes, within 40 minutes, you're out. I'm not. That's coercion right there. You can't do that, right? You can't tell me, if you don't call me in 40 minutes, this is it. I'm not, because it's not true. It's not true. It's simply not true. As long as you're not lying about the product, as long as you're not lying about the possibilities, as long as you're not fabricating. So if somebody's, can you make $1 million in the stock market in one transaction? Yes, but you're not going to talk about that. All right. You can create examples. You can not create. You can call examples. You can call them out, right? You can underline the examples, bring them, show them the success stories, go through the success stories so they they get motivated. But that's motivation, right? That's not coercion or manipulation. All right, with that in mind, and we're going to dedicate an entire video so that we understand what those guidelines are. I really think it would be cool that you guys understand how to have a clean script. You're never going to be as clean as what the FTC is, not because you're not ethical or you don't want to do it. It's just you're not an attorney. You're not an attorney. You're not a psychologist, right? All those things go into contemplation if a company gets sued or a company gets investigated by the FTC. The FTC is not going to blame the marketers because the main job of training people to become FTC compliant is the responsibility lies on the company, not the marketers. You take a brand new salesperson, you're going to train that person, you better train them right. So most likely the company is going to be the problem. I've never seen a situation where they come after the salespeople, unless the salesperson is misusing credit card numbers and information, stuff like that, which is just personal fraud, right? A crime committed by a person. All right, perfect. Let's see here. Let me just see. There's somebody else that can. Rose is here. Welcome, Rose. Take advantage. Take some notes. Have fun. All right. Sorry about my scrubby look today. I'm just feeling relaxed. It's kind of rainy outside, so yeah, I didn't fix my hair or anything. I didn't shave, so sorry. All right, perfect. All right, so we're gonna continue here, and so that we can keep up with not with the Kardashians, but with this. All right, so the first item that we have here, as far as the mindset of the prospect, is who asks how much is it? Who asked that question? And there are various scenarios and in angles that we can talk about and that we're going to talk about. Just understand one thing. There is asking how much is this, and there is demanding to know how much this is. So sometimes people say, so how much is something like this? How much does it go for? And then you tell them, well, it really depends on what you're trying to accomplish, what kind of transactions you want to get into, what's the fund, what kind of funds you have, and how fast you want the proceeds to be realized, and what kind of markets you want to target, depending on whatever it is that you're selling. Stocks, real estate, whatever, right? And then the person says, yeah, well, that makes sense, right? Boom, they drop it, you continue. There's nothing, they're not in this category. Who asks how much is this? And one of the things that you will come to understand is when you pick up the phone, you're going to start understanding personalities just from the second they start talking, right? Like, for instance, I'll just give you an example. I think I've said this before. I'm not sure. Well, I've said it in training, so maybe I'm confused, and I think I've explained this on a video, but maybe it was training that I said this. Well, no, it was training that I said this, but maybe not on a video. I haven't said it on a video. So I know when there is someone showing off how articulate. So by showing how articulate someone is, and this is typically a young guy, anywhere between 22 and I'd say 32, right? Sometimes there are people that are immature in life, so you find those, even at the age of 40 and 50. But typically 90% of these guys that call and they talk really, really good, right? They sound really good. They they're very precise with the direction of the call. They want to dominate the call, and they start dropping terminology, right? Um, if you hear someone, and this is on a 90, I'd say almost 99% of the times, if you hear a young guy saying, I do a day trading, I'm not saying everybody, not 100%, but I'd say, I'm going to say 90% just for kicks, just for symmetry, just for, benefit of the doubt. I've been doing this for so long. I know exactly what kind of personalities you have to deal with on the phone. If you call someone, whether you have an appointment scheduled, they ask for your time, or you're dialing the numbers out, uh, uh, in any at any time, and you hear someone saying, I do day trading, and following that, they start talking about millions of dollars. They never say I make millions of dollars. They just talk about, I've allocated money here, I've done this, I've done that, I've blah blah blah, and they start dropping heavy terminology. And let's say that you're talking about real estate, and then start talking about how many doors, because having many doors, and I don't want to get into the residual income of rental properties, because it just I don't want to be have to deal with rent tenants, and I don't want to have to deal with and they start talking about taxes, and they start talking about, and they sound like a YouTube business personality. That guy is that personality is the personality that is just it's just not. Every time I get to, I mean, a very very few times have I dealt with someone. I think the last people I closed, I don't know, a couple of years ago, there were two guys, and they started talking like that, and I judged them because, one, they were young. I could tell they were young, and they started just dropping a lot of terminology. But there was something different about him. They talked about having met and having done things in the past that started to give me a lot of confidence, as far as the because the devil's in the details, right? And not overdone details. It's just that's why it's a very psychological. I don't care what people say out there. Some people say this, or it shouldn't be a cycle. It is a psychological game. This is a psychological game, period. Okay, it's not about real estate. It's not about stock market. It's not about the course. It's about what people need and want in life. This is what this is about. I don't care that somebody's the CEO of a company. You're the CEO of that company, but you're not an expert. A lot of real estate investors, I don't care if they're, have 30 years in coaching, they don't understand the sales process, even if they're salespeople themselves, because they hire people to do this. I know this. So going back to these guys, great guys, and I was able to close them. But the majority of these guys that have big personalities dominate the call, and they have that arrogance about them, because sometimes it can be arrogant, but you don't have to be condescending. And typically arrogant people are condescending. That's probably be aware of not confusing arrogance, right, for confidence, right? Confident people are very willing to listen. Confident people are very willing to share information about themselves, ask questions that they don't know, right? A confident people understands that if they don't have confidence within a certain field, because think about this: if somebody's giving you, if you're selling real estate investment, right? Let's say taxes and deeds, and somebody who's approaching your company, the company you work for, to learn how to do taxes and deeds. I had a conversation with a guy saying he lost all his real estate transactions. He had a lot of properties, a lot of doors back until the recession hit back in 2008, and he lost everything. And now he wanted to pick it up, and we were talking about mentorship, and he said, well, mentorship is probably for somebody who's a newbie and blah 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 blah. And I said, okay, so let me understand this. So you think you're not a newbie? No, I'm not a newbie. Okay. And you're saying that you know quite a bit about tax liens and deeds, correct? Yeah, I know quite a bit. So number one, if you are so experienced in real estate, how is it that you lost all the property back in 2008, and you didn't recover? You didn't transition, first of all, and then you can recover. That number one. And number two, if your plan is so effective going into tax liens and deeds and you're not a newbie, that means that you have experience, and experience can only be expressed through how much money you're making in the field. How come you're asking for our help, and how come you're only making $6,000 a month? So logic kills any pretensions. Anybody who's pretentious is not going to be able to come back at you unless they're trying to be a smartass. This guy was within all the overconfidence, because he wasn't arrogant, but the overconfidence that he had gave him the resources for him to recover and say, you're right. And he was very humble about that. So he said, yeah, you're right. I know what you're saying. So there's a saying in Beverly Hills: if you have to ask how much it is, you cannot afford it. Typically, people who ask you, how much is this? This is what I tell them. I tell them, let me ask you a question. Why are you asking me how much it is? So they tell me, well, because I want to know that I can afford it. And I tell them, well, maybe you can't afford it. And it's not the money. And I tell them this: it's not the money that you can't afford. It's mentally, maybe you can't afford it. There are two types of people that ask me how much it is, because they're confused about something, so they ask how much, right? And people that just want to get rid of me by knowing, because if I tell you it's $1,000, it'd probably be the same as if I told you it's $100,000. Trust me, these people. How do you know something is worth the money that is tagged, or the price tag on something, if you don't understand what something is, right? There's a good example, and you can use this example, is like, well, what if I came to your house, knocked on your door, and I told you, hey, I want to sell you a car for $4,000. Are you interested? You're going to tell me, no, I'm not interested. But what if what I have parked outside is a Lamborghini Egoista, right? $4 million car, probably the most expensive car in the world, and I'm giving it to you for $4,000. You didn't take the time to understand what is it that you're selling me, right? Because you know the price up front. People that are preoccupied with price, they can't afford it. There's another good saying, and you can say this: what if I told you, what if we're on a plane and I have a trunk full of money, $1 million in there, and I dumped it out of the plane? If I drop it out of the plane, would you jump off the plane to go get it? No, I'm not going to kill myself for $1 million. Well, but I never told you that we were airborne. We're grounded. We're on the ground. So you never took the time to ask me, are we flying, or are we parked on the ground, right? So that's kind of the same premise for someone who asks how much it is, right? Try to get rid of people, because I'd say 80% to maybe, I don't know, I'm gonna leave it at 80% of people that ask you how much it is. They're not interested in the value. They're interested in something being economical. And nothing is cheap enough for them. All right, nothing is. And as far as investments, you can't really determine if that something is cheap or expensive. It's how profitable it is, how efficient an investment is, right? So that's a good one. All right. Who is really enthusiastic about the opportunity you're calling about? This is another good one to catch, because I have setters that come, right, they come to me and they say, "Hey, Jader, I have this great I have this guy who's so excited about meeting you and hanging out with you." Hello. Okay. Oh, who's that? Let me see. Hold on. Oh, Paula's here. Thank you, Paula. Welcome on board. We're doing our live today a little bit earlier, just because I couldn't do it Tuesday, so I have to do something tonight. I'm not gonna miss. I'll just do it early and sacrifice some people, I guess. But I have to do it every at the very least once a week. So I was saying that people I completely lost my train of thought. Let me just go back here. Okay, so there are yeah, I got setters coming sometimes, and hey, Jeter, I have this guy who's really excited about the opportunity, and this guy is awesome, and I'm like, so what did you send him? No, I have a follow-up call with him because he was driving, and you told me not to talk to people who drive, never pitch people while they drive. It's just no point, and you might cause an accident. When people are extremely excited about the opportunity, it's weird because people with no money, I'm sorry, guys, I have to turn on my AC. People that don't have any money, they are super excited about talking to anyone who's going to talk about money, about deals, right? They want to see. There is so much of this belief that if you keep asking, people will give you something for free. They don't say for free, but keep asking. Somebody's going to give you the answers. Yeah, that could happen, but not if you sign up for a company that makes money on sharing information. Please understand that, right? So if you're one of those, stop. Don't sign up for companies to give you free information. It's not going to happen. And this is one of the things that I tell people. And this is one that I didn't put there. We're going to take a little more than 30 minutes today, but who cares? Sometimes people tell me, well, why don't you, I thought this conversation was about you telling me, give me some tips. All right, so I'll give you some tips. What are you going to do with them? What are you going to do with the tips I give you? Let's say that you want to be a brain surgeon. And you're like, well, I thought, you meet the professor at the medical school. And well, I thought you were going to give me some tips. It's like, okay, I'll give you a tip. All right. And he gives you a tip. What are you going to do? You're going to go and become a brain surgeon? You're going to make money? It's the same thing with anything. Because one piece of information depends on many other pieces of information to form a transaction. And that's what people don't get sometimes. Give me some direction. But anyway, so people that don't have money are typically the people that are really excited to waste, blanks to see if somebody might just help them out. People that have a lot of money with good credit, they're going to be the opposite. They know, and that's how you read people psychologically. This person's got to have a lot of money because they're really reserved. They don't have to be rude. They're not gonna they're gonna ask buyers questions, right? They're gonna ask questions that someone with a legitimate interest and with money would ask, right? If you talk to someone who doesn't have money, the conversation is completely different than somebody who has money. With someone that has money, you have to get them to be a little more reciprocal. Some of them will be excited to talk to you. Maybe they don't expect that there's going to be a charge at some point, an investment, right? But once you instill logic, they understand. I mean, look, I've had people telling me, "Oh, this costs money. I mean, if somebody says that to me, I know that everything that I did before didn't matter. This person is just, sometimes people would say that out of spite. They knew that you were going to ask for money, but they still say, "Wait, there's an investment, there's tuition, there's a charge." What they're doing is stalling. Not even stalling. What they're doing right there is just practically saying, "Okay, well, thank you very much for the time. I'm not going to invest any money. I was not really that interested." Right. So read people when you start talking to them. All right. If you hear someone on the phone talking about, well, my car broke down last week, and I'm taking the bus. You know what's going on. This person doesn't have any money. Or when someone says, "I have a secure card," they call it a secure credit card. It's not a credit card. It's a secure card. When they say, "I have a secure card," they don't have any money. Secure cards are given to people that have miserable credit scores just to give them a chance to see if they have responsibility somewhere to pay back. They don't have any money, right? Be on the lookout when you talk to people that don't make sense. If somebody says, I work at a warehouse," and they're just, conveyor belt type of people. And if they say that they have $100,000 on a credit card, that's impossible. It's not possible. So they're lying. So you got to be thinking about these things. All right. Very important that you guys look out for those things. How do prospects lie? That's another good one. Well, the lying is such a bad and negative term for the majority of them, but they lie about money. Again, people know money. Sometimes play the game as if they had money. I had a guy one time, talking like he had money, and he asked me for the price. And you can tell that they don't even know, they don't even understand how business works, because they wouldn't call it a price. They would say, "What's the investment? How much is this going to take monetarily or money-wise?" Typically, people that are not used to making money say price. It's the lingo, it's their language, right? So I separate them from that language. This is an investment, right? So this guy asked me, he was bragging a lot about, deals that he was involved with, closing here, closing there, doing this and doing that. And he said, "So how much is this? What's the price?" And I said, "This is going to be $10,000. I think it was $10,000. And he said, all right. I mean, like, he was acting like he had things going on in his life. Like he was like it, right? You get a lot of guys like that. Typically single guys, very immature guys that believe every single bozo that comes online telling them that they're going to be rich. All they have is to feel like they're rich. So they start thinking, because they're visualizing that they're rich, now they're going to treat you like they're rich, and they're not. And so this guy said, "Well, I have to allocate some funds, not money, right?" Now he's calling them funds. I have to allocate some funds. I'm like, what do you mean allocate? A guy like you should just have money readily available. No, I've invested all my liquid, right? Not my money, not my cash. I've invested all my liquid into, a big project that we have, and blah, 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 blah. And I said, "All right, well, go allocate the money first and then call me and let's see if you qualify for this." All right. So that's a lie. That's flat out somebody who's just lying to people, right? That's just flat out. Oh my gosh, I'm sorry, guys. Right here. This hair. Well, we're gonna leave it there. Who cares? All right. So, but there is a different type of lie, which is more concealing. Salespeople have a reputation. The reputation of screwing people out of money, or it's a bad reputation. I don't understand why. Salespeople have to jumpstart every economy, and every economy has to be sustained on the shoulders and backs of salespeople. That's it. Not architects, not doctors, salespeople. What do you think politicians are? What do you think attorneys are? What do you think technology CEOs of companies like Elon Musk and Steve Jobs and Bill Gates and all these guys are? You think they're technology people? No, they're salespeople. All right? So that's the way it has to be, right? But because of the bad reputation, people tend to wait until they make a judgment call if you are someone they trust, right? That's the reason why it's so important for you to create that respect, right? You show them respect and you build respect for yourself. They have to understand that they're not going to just manipulate the conversation, because you're in control of the conversation. There's nothing wrong with being in control of the conversation, not even the FTC. The FTC hasn't said that if you control the conversation, that you're breaking the law at all. Not that I'm aware. Correct me if I'm wrong, because I might be wrong, but I've been in this dance for a very long time, and I've seen guidelines. I've never seen anything against controlling conversation. That's part of your personality. If you are, I control conversations in my social life. That's not a crime, right? I cannot coerce people. That is fraudulent. Cool. So understand when people lie to protect themselves and when people lie just to paint a picture, a false pretense, right? You gotta be on the lookout for that. Now, if you're dealing with companies, if you're dealing with B2Bs, chances are most people that you're gonna talk to are people that are real. They own a company. They at least have to create a few $100,000 in revenue, right? So they understand. They understand everything is about, everything, it boils down to money, right? So extremely important that you understand that. All right. Our last pit stop here is, if on a call with two business partners, who is the dominating party? It is important to understand who makes decisions. When you challenge someone who's married and the spouse is not on the phone because you're setting them, you're going to set them either for yourself if you're interclosing, or you're setting it for somebody else, right? So the closer will have a conversation with you and ask you, is this set just, I see a spouse set here. Did you talk to both of them? No, I didn't talk to them. Both of them. Okay, so the closer at that point has to figure out who's in command here, right? When I have two people or two business people, right? When I have two people that are business partners, there are two reasons why people dominate. At least right now, I can only think about two reasons why people dominate in a partnership. One, because they just dominate, husband and wife. The wife is just dominating. Wife is calling the shots. Let's say that the wife is calling the shots, but he's the one who submitted the interest for you guys to connect with him. And she's just there for the ride. Now, you got to get her to get serious about it, right? And this is where you ask psychological questions about this, right? You want to make it about psychology. I don't care what they tell you. And if you have a boss that tells you this is not about psychology, let him ride with that. or if you're gonna help him understand, then charge him some money for giving him some piece of knowledge. Okay, it is about psychology. Every single effing cell upon the face of the earth is about psychology. A car, it's everything. I don't care. A door for the house, because psychologically, you want to make sure the door has the right color, the right texture, the right feeling for your house. So trust me, this mic was about my psychology when I purchased it. Everything, right? So it is about psychology. So you have to get her on board. Same thing if the husband is the dominant one. If you have husband and husband, right? Sometimes it's difficult because you got two guys there. One is going to be the dominant guy, right? So you got to catch that, right? And always treat him like what they are, right? Husband and husband. Sometimes they call themselves husband and wife, or vice versa. Don't ask me my personal opinion on this, because we live in a world that's changing. I'm old school, but I need to accept that this is changing, and I need to. I don't need to accept, but I can comply at a certain level, and as long as I don't care what people do. Anyway, it's not about that. It's just I'm just trying to make sure that you understand that you have to deal with people and respect them. Right? You got to offer the respect. What you believe is your belief, but you respect them. You got to respect people. All right. Same thing, woman and woman. Right. What I do is, because you don't know the setting, you don't know how they set the rules, right? You have two people with the same, I guess, sex, whatever, and you don't want to be offensive, especially because you want to create a rapport with them. So it's in your best interest to be very tactful. So when somebody says my husband is this, I ask him, I'm sorry. So should I refer to you as a wife or a husband? A husband is fine. We're just two husbands. We're two men. Sometimes you have people that do want to be referred to as whatever gender they feel like calling themselves. Again, regardless of your beliefs, you're here to make money, and you're here. And I guess that's what's interesting about the capitalistic system is there's no room for discriminating people, right? It's just it makes you're after the green, not any other color or any other thing, right? So, but always make sure you establish that. That's very important. Always gain the trust of the person who's, if you're on the phone with two people, you already talked to one, the husband, the wife, the significant other was added to the call. Well, he shouldn't, or she shouldn't be added to the call. She should be there. He should be there on the call when you call, if you already set him up, or your setter set you up. And establish, if you hear that the new person added is not responding, or is very far away from the phone, or is not sitting, if you're on a video call, I ask the question directly. So if it's the wife not being very cooperative, I just say, hey, Amanda, is it okay if you give us 100% of your time, because you are extremely important to your husband, and I don't want him to make a decision if we decided to bring him on board without your input, because you might see things differently and you might disagree. In that case, you would have to, understand each other. And I need to make sure that you guys none of you will be a distraction for the party involved in the process. I tell them straight up. I don't have any problem with that. All right. All right, we went a little bit over on both ends, because I started, so it's supposed to be 30 minutes. I started at 10:02, and it's 43 after. So I went for 53 minutes. All right. Perfect, guys. Love to share knowledge with you guys. I am going to make a video of two things, guys. I'm going to make a video of a mock call. So I'm gonna bring a guest, and we're gonna make a call. I'm gonna ask him to be very tough on me, so you guys can see how I slip out of uh, hard scenarios. All right. So we're gonna do that upcoming. I'll probably do it live. I think I'm gonna do it live, and then I'll post it like I post all the lives. All right, guys. My name is Jader Salazar. I am the founder of Black Label Closers. You can visit us at www.blacklabel-closers.com. You can go to schoolskool.com. Be part of the community. You can sign up for the free course. You can ask questions. You can sign up for the $97 course. That's valued at $1,000, but you guys only pay $97. And if you really want to be very aggressive, start selling some high ticket, you can be part of my partnership program, where you are going to get paid 50% of the proceeds of the selling price. I don't think anybody's doing that, right? Other than me. And then we can talk about any other opportunities. We are here every Thursday and Tuesday for the 95% of the times, unless I have to do something important. Nothing's more important than this, but sometimes are inevitable things. If I don't do it at Tuesday, if I miss a Tuesday, like today, I did it a little earlier because I couldn't do it Tuesday, and today I have something at 7:00. But I always have a live during that week, or for the most part, two live sessions. Training is very important, and you get a ton of information. You guys, with every single video that I've posted, you guys will be paying $10,000 if you were to go somewhere else to get the training. And trust me, they're not going to train you half as good as I can train you. So you got plenty of information right there. But of course, the course is going to add more, and you're going to get me to answer questions as well. I want to get a community big enough so that we can get together, everybody together, and I can answer questions personally, and I can, do some mock calls with you guys as well. All right. You can be here every Tuesday and Thursday, 7:00, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can go to Facebook, Black Label Closers. You can go to Instagram. You can come here to YouTube, or visit us on the web. All right. In the meantime, stay safe. See you Tuesday. Good luck, guys. Thank you.